This session will discuss some exciting emerging technologies in logistics, which will optimize the flow of production, procurement, and logistics. Please welcome our chair for this session, Semra Barutchu, Vice President, Engineering Services Asia, Infosys. Semra has over 18 years of technical and business leadership experience across the Asia telecommunications sector, covering network engineering, technical sales, product management, and product market readiness for businesses supported across Asia. She'll be in conversation with Rajesh Uppal, Senior Executive Director, Maruti Suzuki India Limited, first, and then with Nandkumar Kulkarni, Integrated Supply Chain Director, ISC Mondelez, India. Rajesh is a technology professional and an IT evangelist. He drives both the IT and HR functions at Maruti Suzuki India Limited. He has over 35 years of experience in the corporate world, spanning roles, diverse roles and responsibilities ranging from IT, logistics, business analytics, digital transformation, HR, learning and development, and CSR. Nandkumar is an experienced operations supply chain professional with 20 plus years of experience. Nanda has built the supply chain for new businesses, led digital transformations, drove large-scale restructuring for legacy manufacturing plus distribution networks, and has led complex operational turnaround and conceptualized executed supply chain strategy for explosive business growth. It's a pleasure to have you all with us this afternoon, and Semra, the floor is all yours. Over to you.
Thank you, Justin, for the introductions. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. Once again, welcome to the session. In the last few years, we have been witnessing massive disruptions to the industries, including the environment in which we operate in. We have seen advancements in transformational technologies such as IoT, software-defined, data-driven, virtualized solutions. And now with the introduction of 5G, that will be even seen even greater mass deployment. The cloud technology adoption is fast-tracking the digital solutions deployments. And as well, we're seeing the customer behaviors are changing quite significantly, where they're demanding very much customized, on-demand, secure, and purposeful offerings. COVID and the impact it has on everybody in terms of how we live and work. And of course, the environmental awareness of forcing organizations to rethink fundamentally why in which they need to operate. This is underpinned by immense opportunities, but also risks to industry convergence and elimination. So without further delay, I'd like to invite Rajesh to the conversations where together we will be exploring at some of the challenges as well as the opportunities across industries and how Maruti Suzuki approaches these problems. Rajesh, welcome to the session.
Thank you so much.
Right. So let's start with Industry 4.0, Rajesh. The Industry 4.0 adoption across the manufacturing sector has been at the forefront in really taking on the next generation's technologies. How has Maruti Suzuki adopted these technologies, and what are the benefits you've seen from adoption of these emerging technologies?
Thanks, Semra. I think for auto industries, connected shop floor has not been a new phenomenon. Connecting all your shop floors with IT has been there for decades. And predominantly, so that IT-OT integration which people have been talking about, I think from auto industry standpoint, this has been there for a long time. And there's a very solid backbone where the production plan which is made in our IT systems get downloaded to our MES systems and all, and then MES systems ensure that it runs over there to manage our manufacturing, whether it is making sure that you produce exactly the same specification car but you are required to be produced, or does it have the right quality which is need to be there to ensure that we have that quality. And also it need to integrate the whole ecosystem of suppliers to get the right part at the right time to ensure that. And also there's a layer of MES which manages to connect everybody to ensure that we produce right car for right customer at right time with right quality. So there are within built-in systems to ensure that the quality checks are there, like the talking to be done, or maybe emission levels of the cars are in the range which is supposed to be for that customer or that country, and so on and so forth. Also, it connects with all our ecosystem partners to give right part on the line, because automated deal with big bulky parts, the big seats, big bumpers, big something around. So you're getting right color and right kind of bumper at right time at the shop floor to ensure that you have a continuity of production and so on and so forth. So this has been there for a long time. Now, what has changed now is that, going forward, a lot of our batch shops were there, which was not really very well connected. Now, with the good IoT platforms available, are able to connect every equipment on the shop floor to make sure that you run everything on high efficiencies. You predict failures or something which can go wrong going forward around and all. Ensure that you can avoid those outages and things like that. And also you manage the quality again precisely at that time with what is happening around and all. And in the whole process, you establish the complete traceability of each and every part in the car. So that in case something go wrong, you can go back to source when it was produced, with what parameters and so on and so forth to build that up. So it's able to improve those efficiencies to the next level with the lot of data available. And also the predictive analysis can give to avoid anything outages around and all. So that way, I think this is something which is becoming a strong backbone of our manufacturing, and it is ensuring that we are there to manage it better.
Excellent. So, so it's great to hear that this is already very mass, I guess, expanding in terms of the implementation. But the consumers are changing quite significantly. Their demands are about customized. So it's not around that mass production, but it's how is it relevant to me? Is it my color? Is it my tune? Is it my variety? Given, the industry 4.0, and you've got this manufacturing really focused on churning as much items out of the shop floor as possible, how do you then introduce mass customization? And how do you also ensure that sales, manufacturing, and supply chain are also, information is percolated across the value chain?
I think it's a very, very important question today. See, one thing very clear, and that too again post-pandemic, which is coming very strongly, is that the whole interaction with customer is becoming digital. And we, as any OEM and all, has a lot of information about customer when we interact with him around and all. And then we have been creating a big data platform where everything the customer wants should be there to manage it and all. And how can that whole demand can be connected back to your manufacturing shop floor on a real-time basis or whenever required to basis around to handle that. So the whole interaction with the customer is totally digital now. In fact, there are around all the 26 touch points which we have identified as the OEM customer can have with us. Almost 23 of them are digital right now. So with that, you have lots and lot of sense on what he's looking forward to. That's point number one. And also they have option of configuring what they want, frankly, when they want some special gadgets to put in and so on and so forth, they can do that work. And connecting that with our manufacturing system is the whole ability on the shop floor to really produce each and every car on an order basis, frankly. So the whole industry 4.0 solutions which we have does ensure that when I said that production plan, the marketing and sales connecting with our production system, planning system connecting with our shop floor system, and then reversal for the whole sales and distribution. I think this whole integration of the whole enterprise ensures that you can handle those kind of very clear customization for each and every of your customer based on his needs around and all. And for that, you need a very, very strong IT backbone, which connects all those pieces together to really deliver to the customer, which is looking forward to.
Wow, I mean, that's amazing. And given like the population and the number of customers we cater for, it can be a challenge, but I guess with the emerging technologies, amazing opportunity too. You touched on the pandemic, and I guess the advantage is a lot of our customers have gone digital, but pandemic also had a lot of interruptions in terms of the production system. You know, factories needed to shut down and then restart, and the whole supply aspect, especially with the semiconductor shortages across the globe as well. What are the learnings from that, and how do you then prepare, you know, to such shortages that are across the industry, not just to yourself?
Semra, I think very important to understand is auto is not an industry, it's an ecosystem. You know, you have tier 1s, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers and all, and everything has to work like a well-oiled machine to really end of the day you produce a car. So pandemic really created a lot of hassles with respect to the availability, and also pandemic was very sudden. Now, if you have planned shutdown, you work it out in a very planned way that you will start off. But pandemic in India was just overnight. You know, today evening it's closed, and tomorrow onward nothing is working and all. And in large industry like ours, there are a lot of shutdown times, and you have to manage everything around to do that. So that's one is ability to really be able to manage your operations per se. But more than that, I think one big learning for any organization of our size has been that how can you make your organization agile? Traditionally, auto company works with a levelized production, same number per day. You plan your production for a month. All supply chains are supplying to ensure that you're getting right parts at right time to do that and all. Where suddenly, you know, you're getting into a mode that you are discovering that, okay, this more parts are available today, you can produce something more. So can you really change your production plan on a everyday basis to handle that and all? Make sure that you all are connected supply chain partners are also agile to supply you in time, and we as a manufacturer works on a hours inventory than a day's inventory. So for us to have a very agile ecosystem where you can, you know, increase production, improve productions, or you can cut down production on a real-time basis, working with them on a day-to-day basis, working with your suppliers. So a big learning is how flexible and agile you can be to ensure that you manage your operations very effectively, very efficiently, and also ensure that your customer demands are met as we go along. And post-pandemic, we have seen a huge demand surge in the country, and one of the reasons for that in India has been the you know, people avoidance on a mass mobility medias or the mass transportation area around. People wanted to individual. In fact, people were scared to go to shared mobility platforms to really travel, and then which really increase the demand for the personal cars in the country. And how agile you are to ramp up your production to ensure that you fulfill your demands. And same thing is with the semiconductors, where all the semiconductors, you know, you have some clarity on what you're going to get in the next week time, but this is all changing every day. You know, one more COVID problem in one plant somewhere and all, and the semiconductor go down further, or something start working further and all, and you have suddenly a more supply happening. So in fact, our supply chain is tracking, you know, material loaded into a flight somewhere and all, and then you start your planning your production so that at moment that component reaches you, you can just start producing immediately. And you know, so I think that kind of flexibility and agility, and your ability to integrate whole ecosystem to have a visibility into what is there and what's impact it will have on which supplier, which models, that kind of visibility and an optimization which is, I think, is a big learning and big deployment at this point of time.
So obviously, you know, we have to be in a very agile, connected environment. There'll be some elements that we're going to have to impact the production, but more or less, how does then the supply flex on an hourly basis, which is amazing. I've got a slightly different question coming up for you. You know, the rise of autonomous vehicles is really causing a tectonic shift in the industry. We've got this car manufacturing ecosystem, as you called it, but it's vastly transitioning to, you know, a software digital environment, you know, to have the, you know, how's Maruti Suzuki responding to the market shift and trying to reposition itself for the future?
See, IoT industry 4.0 we just talked about was more toward manufacturing and that side of the story. But I think the as you said, and then everybody knows now that a car has more of software and chip in that than the physical part in that, with adding intelligence to the thing, and also maybe connectivity is making them more consumable of the data, whether it is remote diagnostic, whether it is you know, giving track and trace for the vehicle, or entertainment related areas around, or infotainment areas around, and so the possibility of having the car connected and creating use cases of that has been huge. And all organization has been going in a journey of how do we really make sure that you create that value for your customers. And in the back end, you have a very strong connected platform to consume the data and on a real-time basis. Some of them is real-time basis. Some of them are data where you analyze the data and respond back to customer after analyzing that, okay, maybe this part can fail after, you know, so many kilometers. So why don't you visit your nearest service station for its change of the part, and so on and so forth. So the connected platforms of the organizations, and making sure that you get all data around from the vehicle is something which has initiated now. Like anybody else, we also have the platform. And going forward, I think you are adding more and more features into that to ensure that you have more enriched data, more real-time data, and making sure that you consume that for a better experience for your customers. Now, autonomous in India, again, we are at a very nascent stage right now, at a level 1 or 2. But as we go along, I think this will mature with more local consumable use cases of those and all, and to be done by them is a journey which everybody has to go through, which is right now sitting on top of the whole ecosystem of software to deliver that to experience to the customer and all. And I guess after some time this will become a commodity, but I think your ability to innovate on top of it to give better customer experience as compared to your customer will be only the winner as the time comes.
Yeah. So this, I think, also it's an enormous opportunity, but it also creates the challenge of the skill sets. You know, you're moving from a very different skill sets from the traditional manufacturing to a lot more software enabled, you know, cloud software, digitally enabled talent. How are you tackling, I guess, also the HR of the organization, the head of HR, how are you tackling that issue within?
I think this is very, very important, and for a manufacturing organization has a different culture to work on, and people who work on a so-called digital, as so to speak, people with those skills around need a very different culture to do that and all. So what my thinking is, and what we have done in the company is, we created a separate organization with separate environment for those people.
Okay.
So we have a separate organization called Digital Enterprise, which sits in a different office outside manufacturing. We have a different skill set of people over there. Some of them has the manufacturing background, some people taken from the market in that organization. And we're trying to create a different culture over there of innovation and fast, fail fast kind of environment, so that we can keep on innovating on that. That's point number one. Number two, again, over there, we have created a new organization called Innovation Center of Excellence, where we are able to tap all the startup community. Either this could be at a very initial idea stage, or we call it incubation program, or we have something called mail program, which is our own innovation platform, where somebody has a POC, we give them a problem statement, ask them to do a POC and show us the technology to run, or is a mature startup which can be straightaway adopted to our company. And also all those three have a different lead time of adoption, but we have created that platform to getting, I'm happy to state, around 19 companies are already there working with us now, startup companies, where their solutions are being used by us. Many of them have become our vendors now, which get a regular business and then been horizontally adopted in the whole organization, to ensure that those innovation, open innovation from the industry, how can you integrate that with your backend systems to get value that much faster than developing yourself. So I think in nutshell, the whole culture need to be created for that. You should be open enough to really get innovation from outside and integrate where you are working, and ensure that you have right talent in that organization which is working with you to ensure that. And also fourth, you have right partners helping us to do that. So we have multiple partners who are helping us to develop that in that whole system of digital enterprise, which is, I think, hopefully will grow to maybe 5 or 6 times in next 2 years. But I guess for a company like ours, it's a necessity.
Yeah, so it's both on organic and inorganic way of really addressing the problem.
Absolutely.
So I think our time is up, Rajesh, and I can't believe how quickly it flew. We talked about, the Industry 4.0 integration and the use of AI/ML to get even more insights than just the manufacturing shop floor. We talked about how we're preparing towards the digital autonomous technologies, but also on the talent itself, on how we have to tackle both the problem, the organizational, as well as the technology as well. Ultimately, technology is enabling a lot of opportunities, may it be challenges out there. So thank you very much for your time. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
So we've just heard from Rajesh that talked about smart supply chain around the automotive industry. I would like to now welcome Nandkumar from Mondelez, that will be giving us the data-driven insights for smart supply chain in the food manufacturing industry. Nand, welcome to the session.
Thank you so much, Semra.
Nandkumar, so Mondelez is a global snacking leader, that we all take advantage of globally, which has a very, wide range of products. I mean, this translates to a very complex supply chain from shelf to field, and also creates challenges in terms of on-time as well as on-demand solutions. What does your transformation roadmap for the digital supply chain look like? It would be very important if you could touch on the opportunities, considerations, as well as challenges.
Absolutely. I think a fantastic question to start the conversation, and very happy to hear the terminologies which otherwise we are using in Mondelez. When you talk about, say, shelf to field, it's a fantastic way to represent the supply chain and how it can truly become a consumer inspired. Now, Mondelez, as you know, it's a snacking powerhouse, and our ambition is to provide snacks at right time, at right moment to millions of our consumers. And hence it's extremely important to have a very agile and resilient supply chain, which can really help us to fulfill the expectation, ambitions of our evolving consumers. To begin with, we need to define the supply chain which is truly consumer inspired, and hence there is a very good emphasis when we say shelf to field. If you see and do a little bit of drill down on that, it starts with shelf, not starts with field. It starts with the shelf, means you are first with consumer, and then you backtrack and come to the entire say downstream of supply chain, and then define it end-to-end supply chain. Now, typical definition of end-to-end supply chain is plan, source, make, and deliver. So you have planning, you have manufacturing, you have distribution, and sometimes ignored component in whole this gamut is about the sourcing, like how you can really involve the ecosystem of the sourcing. So when we try to sort of drive our transformation for digitization, it was important first to understand the whole supply chain. How do you make planning more effective? How do you involve your sourcing partners into the entire supply chain journey? How digitization can make manufacturing a truly digital factory kind of a concept. And then delivery, that how you are able not just to reach your consumer, but also take advantage of evolving channels, evolving marketplace, so that your supply chain is ready to respond to the market in much better and effective way. And then we started sort of cascading down all these digital ambitions very effectively. So we adopted an approach called digital lighthouse in India. Rather than spreading ourselves across the supply chain, can we create a digital lighthouse, implement all the digital practices there, and then reapply to the rest of the supply chain? Obviously means a lot of proof of concepts were developed, lot of test and learns are getting implemented. We are not only building the right infrastructure or right technical challenges, facing right technical challenges, but we are also building the right technical capability, what we call as a digital quotient of the overall supply chain team. Now, while many things are going on, it's important to have a very cohesive plan. It's very important to understand what can be the challenges or pitfalls which can come out of digital transformation. And hence one needs to be watchful that you are not only stuck into the proof of concept or only say test and learn in a limited scope, but you are able to expand it when the scale up is needed. That's the first watch out. I think second watch out, everyone is doing digital, and hence you should not do digital for sake of doing digital. There has to be a very strong business linkage. Digital should be a competitive advantage in your long-term vision and not doing it for the sake of doing it. Third, and probably a very important one, that while you are doing all the digital transformation, it is important to keep in mind the cyber security, that you should have the right barriers, you should have the right process, right controls in place, so that digital becomes a sustainable journey going ahead. So that's how I can summarize our consumer inspired digital transformation journey in few words.
Well, I mean, it's customer experience is the new battleground, and I love the fact that you highlight it all comes with the customer. But you're dealing with perishable goods and foods, so how do you make sure that how are you using technology for that demand fluctuation, and more importantly, how are you making sure that your suppliers are also part of your strategy and are onboarded with exactly what your strategy is to the market?
No, fantastic question. Again, means I can break the question into two parts. I think first question was more on the how we can take care of the demand fluctuations, and second part, obviously, I will talk more about like how we are involving the suppliers into the overall strategy. So you are very right. Means we are living in a truly VUCA world. It's a highly volatile environment, and hence it is important that we have the right forecasting abilities. Not the traditional ways of forecasting, which is more like based on the historical data or driving certain building blocks. To a certain extent, in a volatile environment, that may not give the right outcome. And if the forecasting is not good, it impacts the overall reliability. It creates a cascading waste impact into the overall supply chain. Hence, we have moved away from traditional building block, historical data-driven forecasting to more advanced statistical forecasting. which can take care of multiple variables simultaneously and help us to predict the business situation at a granular level much more effectively. So the transition from traditional forecasting to the advanced digitized AI ML based forecasting is a journey which we are embarking into it, but we can witness a lot of early successes out of it. So that's how forecasting can really help us to make the overall supply chain more resilient. It can help us to reduce waste. It can help us to fulfill the service with lower inventory. So it has multiple benefits, means as we make the supply chain truly reliable supply chain. Now, the important question which you have asked about the suppliers involvement, and that's a fantastic question, and especially in a current pandemic world. Many times supply chain is viewed in a myopic way that it's your supply chain which decides the performance. But I think this particular pandemic has showed us that it's not your supply chain alone, but also the supplier supply chain is equally important. And that's what we call as a supply ecosystem. That how you involve your right suppliers, how you create BCP, how you can drive vendor managed inventory, electrical or electronic data interchange, so that it becomes a very synchronized and synergistic supply chain. So we are starting with that, both for our back-end customers as well as our back-end suppliers as well as our front-end customers, making the supply chain real time, that is giving better visibility of overall transactions which we are doing, and then create an online feedback mechanism which can be addressed on a regular basis to build the right resilience in the supply chain. So moving away from your own supply chain to supplier supply chain and creating the right supply ecosystem, that's a journey, and that's what we are progressing on to.
Yeah, fantastic. And, that was one of the questions that you actually addressed around how did the pandemic actually impact that? You've got the suppliers, but you had the logistics as well. How did you manage the logistical aspect as well? Because it wasn't just the supply, it was the logistical aspect as well in the whole process.
Exactly. I think, and this was one of the biggest disruption which has happened in the logistics industry when the pandemic hit us, because there was no playbook how to handle a pandemic of this magnitude, and it created a disruption across the supply chain. Logistics was the most impacted part of it. So one of the elements which we are working on aggressively is a very advanced track and trace mechanism, that how you are able to track entire fleet which is moving in a vast country like India, not just location wise, but you can also track the temperatures of your product as they travel on the road. So you get a real-time visibility of all the transactions which are happening away from your locations. And then your response time, if you want to divert, if you want to customize your response, that can be accommodated on a real-time basis, not in a reactive basis. So that's how we started with that. So that was more for the overall, what we call as a primary distribution. But another interesting impact of this pandemic, which probably everyone has witnessed, is a channel shift. We in India have traditional trade, which is mom and pop kind of a stores. We have organized retail, which we call modern trade. And then we have booming e-commerce. So if you have a supply chain or logistics, which is like one size fits all, probably that's not the right approach. We have seen in a pandemic, some channels can behave very differently. Consumers will have a very different expectation, and hence your logistics or supply chain, which can evolve over the time and take advantage of this different channel mix. If you have that agility, that can really convert your supply chain into a huge competitive advantage for a business. So that's how, like, understanding the supply footprint or distribution footprint, making it real time, and then understanding evolving channel and having a separate strategy to take advantage. So this was a two-pronged approach for our logistics related initiatives during and after this pandemic.
I know, I think the pandemic has driven a lot of changes. We've dealt with a lot of negativity, but I think that from the industry and how we actually embrace technology, we've seen significant advancements. I'm going to change the question slightly. Earlier in the year, we had most governments signing up to the Paris Climate Agreement. There's a lot of commitment requirements coming up for large organizations, but we're also seeing now both investors as well as clients saying, what is your sustainability strategy, so that they make purposeful purchasing decisions. What is Mondelez's strategy around sustainability, and how are you also addressing some of the wastages that you see in the industry, because you've got the perishable goods and optimizing wastage?
No, absolutely important question, and thank you for this question. Let me start with waste. Means waste needs to be considered as a wealth. Waste is an opportunity. And that's the approach which we are adopting, especially in a supply chain, that how we can really live a zero loss mindset kind of a philosophy. And now, obviously, it's easier said than done, because while you can always build right infrastructure, right processes, what is equally important is to have the right behavior. So how every person in the organization feel committed to journey of this waste to wealth kind of an initiative. And once that is done, means we are adopting a very nice integrated Lean Six Sigma philosophy for this. Now it's a customized approach for Mondelez, which has the principles of total productive maintenance, lean methodology, and obviously a lot of input come from the Six Sigma philosophy. So this integrated approach really helps us to understand where exactly you are and how the best in class looks like, and then how you can sort of build your milestones, build your journey to move from where you are today to the best in class in a given time. So that's the zero loss mindset, that every loss can be prevented, every waste can be eradicated from the supply chain. That's the journey with which we are approaching. And that, if you extrapolate it for the broader sustainability goals, it has much bigger impact on the bigger subjects, be it like water, be it like carbon, be it like the overall wastage which gets generated into the supply chain. So a journey like, rather than reducing water, how you can become water positive, that are you able to give water back to the nature, which is more than what you are consuming? Are you able to extract more carbon from the nature than what you are emitting? So journey to the carbon positive. How the sites can be made zero waste to landfill, how the green energy component can be increased significantly. So these are the pillars on which our sustainability journey is built. Obviously, plastic is also very important thing, and how all the plastic can be made fully recyclable in a near future. So these are the different pillars with which we are working on it. And I'm very happy to say that India supply chain is making a very tangible and path-breaking progress on both waste as well as the sustainability agenda.
No, great. Thank you very much, Nand, for that input. And I think that's an area that, every industry at the moment needs to look in, because it's become a top of priority with everybody. But more importantly, it is an integral part of the supply chain. And what we heard on the conversation just now, just like with the auto industry, with the, food manufacturing industry, there's a lot of focus around getting real-time data analytics. I love your theory of the supplier strategy, and given the complexity of the products and the dependency on the fields as well, and the raw materials Mondelez relies on, this becomes a very complex, but using technology really simplifies and provides an end-to-end visibility, whether it's from suppliers, whether it's from the logistics, or whether it's, zero waste. It's an absolutely, I think it's a term that will stick in everybody's head, rather than saying creating. I'm really eliminating all the wastages there. Thank you so much for a very valuable discussion. We appreciate all your input.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Fantastic discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Semra, and our speakers, Rajesh and Nandkumar, for that very informative discussion on the topic, Embedded Systems for Data-Driven Decision-Making, Smart Supply Chain Advantage.